Hello friends and welcome to Hitbullseye. My name is Manish and in this video we are going to discuss the topic of the week for February week 4, that is 1 year of the Russia-Ukraine war. You heard it right. In 2022, on 23rd of February, the day on which Russia declared a war on Ukraine. And it's been 1 year and yet the war is on. जब वो वॉर उस टाइम पे शुरू हुई थी तो ऐसा लगा था कि वॉर है तो कितनी ही देर चल पाएगी, एंड दैट टू अ कंट्री लाइक रशिया हैविंग सच अ स्ट्रॉन्ग डिफेंस फोर्स अटैकिंग अ कंट्री like Ukraine, which is nowhere even close to the defense prowess of Russia. But still, it has been over a year and yet the war continues. There are various reasons for that. There are various consequences of that. So let us take a look at all that has happened in the last 1 year and where does the war stand after 1 year. This is Bulldose topic of the week, a year of the Russia-Ukraine war. So in this photograph here is Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Ukrainian President Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky. And this cartoon here, it has been taken from Global Times, and this cartoon here depicts the major reason why Russia attacked Ukraine. Not to justify the, attacking one country by the another country. It's just that it explains the reason. And here, this man that has the, a hat that dons the flag of United States of America and is donning a jacket which says NATO, which is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It has so many flags of NATO and it is flagging each country and it is moving towards eastern side of Europe, which simply shows that NATO, led by United States of America, is trying to expand towards the east. And in that quest, they were trying to make Ukraine their next member, which Russia does not want, because Russia sees NATO as well as the Western countries led by USA as its adversaries. और अगर यूक्रेन एक बफर स्टेट की तरह काम कर रहा है नेटो और रशिया के बीच में, तो रशिया चाहता है कि यूक्रेन नेटो का मेंबर कभी ना बने, लेकिन यूक्रेन नेटो का मेंबर बनने वाला था और जब रशिया ने ये रियलाइज किया, इट अटैक्ड यूक्रेन टू स्टॉप इट फ्रॉम बिकमिंग अ मेंबर ऑफ नेटो, बिकॉज रशिया डिड नॉट वांट NATO forces on its immediate border. That is the major crux or the major reason why Russia attacked Ukraine. Let's take a look at all these things in a bit more detail. So, to understand the entire thing properly, we need to go back into the Cold War era. And for that, we need to go back to the Second World War. So, when the Second World War ended, the year was 1945. This was the year when the Second World War ended. The winner countries was a group of countries known as allies. And those countries included United States, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics or Russia, UK that is a part of, Britain that is a part of UK. These were the major winners, and France also. These were called allies and they were the winners of the Second World War. And the countries which got defeated, although none of of utility here, but it's just that Germany, Japan, and Italy. These were the major three countries or Axis powers which were the losers. Austria-Hungary, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Germany, Japan, and Italy. So 1945 was the year when Second World War ended and these countries emerged as the winners. Now out of these winners, US and USSR were the two biggest countries at that time, whether in terms of economy or in terms of influence or in terms of military. One major thing was that these countries had opposite ideologies. As far as economy and politics was concerned, US was a capitalist country and USSR was a socialist country. To understand it in very simple terms, capitalism or socialism make major difference ये है the factors of production or the means of production and the means of distribution. You can say means of production and means of distribution in an economy are owned and operated by whom? अगर उसमें capitalists या उसमें let's say private individuals allowed हैं, यानी कि जो सारी कंट्री के रिसोर्सेज को ओन और ऑपरेट कर सकते हैं, अगर उसमें प्राइवेटाइजेशन अलाउड है, प्राइवेट इंडिविजुअल्स प्राइवेट बिजनेसेस कर सकते हैं, तो वो कैपिटलिज्म है। अगर मीन्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन और मीन्स ऑफ डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट कंट्रोल कर सकती है, तो उसे हम कहते हैं सोशलिज्म। दैट मीन्स वेयर प्राइवेट कैपिटल इज अलाउड, दैट इज कैपिटलिज्म. Where only social capital is allowed, where society collectively owns the resources, that is socialism. So this is a major doctrine, and there are so many other variations in capitalism and socialism as well, but this is the most important one. Now it is, the jury is still out on whether socialism is a better model or capitalism is a better model, because both of them has its own set of pros and cons. Capitalism, the positives of capitalism include opportunity, growth, preference to merit, creativity, and all those things. But the negative of capitalism includes a huge gulf between the rich and the poor, inequality. Similarly, in socialism, the biggest positive is that there is equality between the rich and the poor. Since no one can own any resources, no one can own any property, everyone is working in a government job, let's say. So there is a lot of equality in the society. There's a lot of, harmony in the society. But on the other hand, the negatives include the economy goes down. There is no reward for hard work. There is no reward for merit. There is no scope for growth, or little or no scope for growth. And that in the long term leads to the decay of a socialist system. And in the long term, extreme capitalism leads to a wide gulf between the rich and the poor. So both the systems has their own set of pros and cons. And an ideal model is a mixed model, where there are some qualities of capitalism and some qualities of socialism. Somewhat the model that India adopted post-independence. And that is why we did not choose any extreme, and our economy has been doing fairly well over the years. Anyway, that is not the point of discussion. So after the Second World War, these countries were the winners, and US and USSR had different models. Now, this never came to be a full-scale war or a hot war. That's why we call this period a Cold War period. 1945 के बाद दोनों कंट्रीज में कोल्ड वॉर चली. इसका मतलब था कि दोनों ने कभी डायरेक्टली एक दूसरे से वॉर नहीं की, लेकिन और बहुत सारे स्फीयर्स में वो कोल्ड वॉर के फॉर्म में हमें दिखाई दी. जैसे कि इन कंट्रीज ने अपने अपने अलाइज बनाने शुरू कर दिए, अपनी अपनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस बनाने शुरू कर दी, ताकि ये देखने के लिए कि किस कंट्री का वर्ल्ड में ज़्यादा इन्फ्लुएंस हो सकता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, यूएस ने अपनी एक मिलिट्री ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बनाई जिसका नाम था नेटो, नॉर्थ अटलांटिक ट्रीटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, came into being in 1949, having its headquarters in the Belgian capital of Brussels. Right, so NATO was a military alliance of the US camp, और USSR ने अपना military alliance बनाई, उसका नाम था Warsaw Pact. There were so many other organizations also, CETO, CENTO, that is Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, Central Treaty Organization, and so many others. But that is not important. ये दोनों मिलिट्री अलायंसेस थी इन दोनों कंट्रीज की. बहुत सारी कंट्रीज में इस कोल्ड वॉर टाइम के दौरान वॉर्स हुई, जिनमें यूएस और सोवियत यूनियन डायरेक्टली इन्वॉल्व नहीं होते थे, लेकिन इनडायरेक्टली इन्वॉल्व होते थे. एंड द मेजर रीजन व्हाई इट नेवर केम टू अ फुल स्केल वॉर इज बिकॉज बोथ ऑफ दीज वर द न्यूक्लियर पावर्स. सो द थ्योरी ऑफ mutually assured destruction, MAD, it's like two people standing against each other, pointing guns on each other's heads. No matter who fires first, the second one will also be dead, or will be incurably harmed. तो mutually assured destruction. दोनों न्यूक्लियर पावर्स थे, इसलिए दोनों में से किसी ने भी एक दूसरे के साथ वॉर नहीं की, बिकॉज दोनों ही कंट्रीज को बहुत ज़्यादा डैमेज हो जाता, जिसे जस्टिफाई नहीं किया जा सकता था. That is why they never fought, but they fought proxy wars in various other countries, including Korea, including Vietnam, so many other countries. And finally, this war came to an end. This Cold War came to an end in 1991. 1991 was the year when out of these two systems, it was the Soviet Union that collapsed. For the same reason, because socialism is highly inefficient in the long run, and there is no growth, there is no innovation, and there is a lot of growth and innovation in capitalist countries. तो जो countries capitalism को support करती थी, यानी कि Western Europe, उनमें बहुत ज़्यादा prosperity थी, और जो countries socialism को support करती थी, East European countries, उनमें बहुत ज़्यादा economic problems आई. तो जब ईस्ट यूरोपियन कंट्रीज ने वेस्ट यूरोपियन कंट्रीज के साथ खुद को कंपेयर किया तो वहाँ पे प्रोटेस्ट शुरू हो गए कि हमें भी ओपन इकोनॉमी चाहिए, हमें भी कैपिटलिज्म चाहिए. And that led to internal dissensions within the Soviet Union, and that led to the collapse or disintegration of the Soviet Union. 1991 में 15 अलग countries बनी सोवियत यूनियन में से, which included countries like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all the Central Asian republics like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, then countries like Belarus, in fact Ukraine also, and Russia was the biggest constituent of Soviet Union. So total 15 countries इसमें से अलग हुई. Now if we look at it that way, it is as if US had won the war and Russia had lost. Alright, we can choose to believe that. But at that time, Warsaw Pact was disbanded. Right? Because there is no alliance, so the pact does not make sense. Ideally, many people say, many foreign policy experts say that NATO also should have been disbanded at this time. Because there is no Cold War, there is no alliance system, so the alliances that were formed should have been disbanded. NATO को भी इस वक्त खत्म कर देना चाहिए था. But US gave its own reasoning. You know, US was in favor of continuation of NATO, and one of the major reasons was the 1991 Gulf War. 1991 Gulf War के दौरान NATO forces ने इराक पे अटैक किया था. Right? In fact, Iraq had invaded Kuwait, तो कुवैत पे अटैक करके इराक की फोर्सेस को हराया गया था. Something like that happened in the Gulf War. तो NATO was proving to be a very effective military organization, और USA ये नहीं चाहता था कि ये effective coordination जो बनी हुई है NATO की, इसे disband किया जाए. इसलिए कोल्ड वॉर खत्म होने के बाद भी NATO को कंटिन्यू किया गया, and that was the first sign of conflict in the future, or conflicts in the future. At that time, the US president had famously said, and I quote, that we will not expand an inch into the east. We will not expand an inch into the east. That means that NATO membership will be freezed and it will no longer be allowed to expand. Like जो countries सोवियत यूनियन से अलग हुए हैं, ये 15 countries, इनमें से किसी country को NATO का member नहीं बनाया जाएगा. That was the idea behind that statement. But fast forward 30 years, we are in 2022-23 now, और इन 15 countries में से 9 countries आज NATO के member बन चुके हैं. 9 countries are now members of NATO. That means NATO has been expanding ever since, and that is the problem that Russia has. Till now it was not a major problem because there are 2 countries which are acting as a buffer between Russia and the NATO, and those 2 countries were Belarus and Ukraine. Belarus and Ukraine. They were like a buffer. They are like a buffer between Russia and all the NATO powers. लेकिन अगर यूक्रेन भी NATO का member बन गया, तो it is like NATO forces have now finally reached the shores of Russia, and this Russia sees as a threat to itself, and that is the reason they have attacked Ukraine. There are other reasons as well. Now, why is Ukraine important for Russia? First reason is it is acting as a buffer state, and Russia expects to keep it that way. तो अगर ये NATO का member बन गया तो buffer state कहाँ से रही? वो तो एक side पे हो गया. So buffer state नहीं रहेगा. That is the first reason why Russia has attacked Ukraine. The second reason why Russia has attacked Ukraine is the military interests. Russia has military interests in Ukraine. Russia is the largest country in the world as far as area is concerned, but it is a landlocked country. In a way, it's a landlocked country. Although it looks like to the entire north is the Arctic Ocean, but it remains frozen for the better part of the year. It is permafrost, it's permanently frozen ice. Although Russia is now drilling the north for developing a ship route, but till now it has been frozen. That means north से कोई भी import-export की activity नहीं की जा सकती. The west is also landlocked because of Europe. South is landlocked because of Asia, and only eastern side is open. That too is a very narrow passage. So that leaves only one passage, and that is through the southwestern part of Russia. Southwestern part, where there are seas like Black Sea, Crimean Sea. So this is a passage for Russia towards the Mediterranean and then towards the Atlantic Ocean. So that is a major advantage. तो यहाँ पे रशिया का एक naval base है, the base of Sevastopol. Base of Sevastopol. That is the military interest that Russia has in the region. Military as well as economic interest, you can say. As well as economic interest in the region. That is the second major reason. Third is the ethnic ties. Now there are various regions of Ukraine. As you can see, this is the map of Ukraine. There are various regions in Ukraine which are bordering Russia, and there are Russian speaking people in these territories. For example, Donetsk, Luhansk. So these are the areas: Luhansk, Donetsk, Mariupol, Kharkiv. There is also a region called Zaporizhia. So these are the regions which are bordering with Russia, and there are Russian speaking people over here. So Russia says that it is the extended motherland of Russia. There are people who are Russian speaking but they live in Ukraine. So that also is a reason why Russia attacked Ukraine. There are so many reasons, basically. Right? Then to top it up, the historical lessons from the Cold War and the injustice meted by the NATO and all those reasons are also there. That is why Russia has attacked Ukraine. So it's been 1 year when Russia had attacked it, and there was a UN Security Council resolution introduced by United States of America and Albania. But of course, since Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, Russia vetoed it. There are 5 permanent members of UN Security Council, and Russia is one of those. The 5 permanent members are US, Russia, China, France and UK. तो रशिया अपने ही अगेंस्ट रेजोल्यूशन क्यों अडॉप्ट होने देगा? सो रशिया वीटोड इट, राइट? सो India abstained on all those occasions because India is not directly helping Russia, but it is indirectly helping Russia because Russia has been an all-weather friend of India. That we'll talk about that later. What is India's stand on it? So that is how things have been proceeding all the year. This is the Europe's map. And it shows how NATO has expanded towards the east, right? So ये जो blue color में आप countries देख रहे हैं, these are the countries which were members of NATO till 1990. But the countries in green, like Poland, Czech Republic, and Hungary, Slovenia, these became members till 1999. Then till 2004, countries like Romania, Bulgaria became the members. Then in 2017. These countries became the members. And now, intensified dialogue was going on to make Ukraine the next member. और ये आपका Russia आ गया. So it is like NATO has been expanding towards the east over the last 30 years, and the next country was Ukraine. So this is something which Russia was not liking. And this is a book, that statement of US President that we will not expand an inch towards the east. उसके ऊपर एक book लिखी थी, Not 1 inch. America, Russia and the making of post-Cold War stalemate. Right? So this book is written on that statement, that it is not 1 inch, it is thousands of miles expanding towards the east. It's like a pun. That book has been written. Also, during the year, the NATO held its summit in June 2022. तो इस एक साल में NATO की एक summit हो चुकी है, जिसमें सारे leaders थे, and this summit took place in Spain, Madrid, June 2022. NATO के बारे में अगर देखें, so NATO was established in 1949. Its headquarters are in Brussels, which is the capital of Belgium. आज की डेट में इसके 30 members हैं, right? और 2 और countries ने इसका member बनने के लिए जो application है वो दे रखा है, Finland and Sweden. So if these 2 countries join, then it will be a 32 member grouping. 1949 में established हुई थी under the Washington Treaty, which shows the dominance of USA. It was created by USA basically, right? So headquarters, it is an integrated military command structure. Some people say that it is the extended muscle of United States of America because it is under the guise of NATO that USA has been invading other countries, whether it is Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait or all other countries. Right? NATO is funded by its members, but US contributes 3/4 of the budget. 75% of NATO budget is funded by USA. So USA is keeping the organization running as an extension of its military strategy. It wants to have dominance all over the world. Right? 30 member states, and Finland and Sweden has applied for the membership. Right? So this is how the organization is running. Now, what were the key decisions taken at Madrid? That would give you an insight into why the war has been extending so long. रशिया अगर इतनी बड़ी मिलिट्री पावर है तो यूक्रेन एक साल से सबसिस्ट कैसे कर पा रहा है, या लेट्स से कि पर्सिवियर कैसे कर पा रहा है? हाउ इज इट सस्टेनिंग द वॉर फॉर ओवर अ ईयर? बिकॉज इट इज बीइंग फंडेड हेविली by the US and NATO. Right? So what were the key decisions at Madrid? Russia as the most significant and direct threat to Allied security was identified. So NATO said that Russia is our biggest threat. More troops and more pre-positioned equipment and weapon stockpile is in the east of the alliance. NATO ने अपनी सारी या ज़्यादातर जो weapons हैं वो east की तरफ जो है वो सेटल करने शुरू कर दिया. So all those members which are in Eastern Europe now has a lot of stockpile of weapons by NATO. There is a commitment by all the allied powers to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense. So they are increasing their spending on defense, to defeat Russia basically. To support Ukraine and other partners at risk. They have directly endorsed the position of Ukraine, and they are going to give a lot of men, a lot of equipment and a lot of money to Ukraine to keep the war running. बीच में इन्होंने थोड़ी बहुत ग्रीन हाउस कमीशन की बात भी कर ली, but it was not the major thing. Then they also talked about China's rising influence and some other things. So major cause of discussion was the Russia-Ukraine war and how and what they can do to support Ukraine in the war. And getting all this support is the reason that Ukraine is still undefeated in the war. So again, it is a sort of a proxy war being fought by the Western countries and a direct war being fought by Russia in Ukraine. And in all this process, it is Ukraine that is being destroyed. That is what has always happened. It's a textbook example of how things happen whenever there is a conflict between USA and Russia. They fight a proxy war in that country. They support, they send a lot of money, a lot of weapons, a lot of equipment, but they never directly engage. That has happened in so many other countries, and Ukraine is the latest example. So after 1 year, recently at the G20 foreign ministers meeting in New Delhi, abhi jo February mein hui hai, in that particular meeting and on the Raisina dialogue also, the US Secretary of State, Mr. Antony Blinken, and the Russian foreign minister, Mr. Sergei Lavrov, for the first time they held a meeting on the sidelines of the G20 foreign ministers meeting, and all this has been made possible due to the intermediation of India. Mr. Modi's famous statement, and I quote, "This is not the era of war," has found so many takers at the international forum. And the former Foreign Minister of India, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, has also endorsed this statement that this is not the era of war. We should have a dialogue and we should sort it out amicably. Thousands of people have died, billions of dollars worth of property, man and material has been destroyed, and it is of no use to anyone. So there should be a dialogue between Russia and Ukraine, and this is not the era of war. So India's stand has been always pro-Russia for the simple reason that Russia has always supported India in its difficult times, whether it is the Indo-Pakistan War of 1971, whether it is the UN resolutions against India on the issue of Kashmir that were most of the times introduced by US or supported by US. So during those times it was Russia that stood by India, and this time India is standing by Russia. So that is how the foreign policy is playing out. Also, we have increased our imports of oil from Russia. And Russia is now the biggest crude oil supplier to India. Right? India has also been confronted a lot many times. Mr. S. Jaishankar, the foreign minister of India, has been confronted a number of times by the foreign media on why India has increased its imports from Russia. And India always says that what India imports from Russia is peanuts as compared to what Europe imports from Russia. So first, Europe should try to reduce its own imports of oil and natural gas from Russia, and only then it should question India. So that is how the year of Russia-Ukraine conflict has been going on, and the war doesn't seem to have an end very soon. It is expected to stretch much more, and a solution I don't think is anywhere in sight, unless funding as well as support from one of the camps stops, which is very unlikely. So what we are seeing right now is, you can say, an offshoot of the Cold War, and it was bound to happen because NATO was not disbanded when it should have been. It remains to be seen. This year, India is holding the G20 presidency. If for the first time Mr. Blinken and Mr. Lavrov have been, India has been able to bring these two gentlemen under one roof, and maybe India can broker or mediate a settlement between these two superpowers. If that happens, India will cement its position as one of the rising emerging powers in the new world order. With that hope and with that understanding, that is all for this episode. This is me, Manish Mittal, signing off. Thank you so much.